And so I was off by one digit, okay? The last digit. Now, what are the odds that I would call somebody I know and get somebody else I know? No. And he says, forget it. He goes, I'll give you the ballroom. I'll give you the ballroom. And then he's kind of also kicked in the presidential suite for 2 nights. But I had to invite him and his girlfriend to the wedding. I got the miracle. I got exactly what I needed at exactly the right time. Does that make sense? And I think that if people really look back and think about, well, how did I meet my husband, or how did I decide to on this career? I would say that you might find that there was a coincidence that was after the.
Welcome back to our podcast. On today's episode, I have another fantastic, wonderful guest for you, and her name is Sophia Demas. Welcome, Sophia.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Sure. So a brief intro on Sophia. Sophia is an author. She's the author. Her first book is The Divine Language of Co-incidences, How Miracles Transform My Life. And the second is Consciousness Beyond Death, True Stories of Signs, Messages, and Timing. Let's go right into it. And so, Sophia, if you don't mind, as you feel comfortable, please tell us about yourself, your background, what was growing up like, what was your academic, your career journey like, all of that we want to hear.
Oh, gee. Okay, I'm going to try to do the short version. Okay, so I'm first generation Greek. And I had a magical childhood in Greece. I was born in Detroit, but we moved to Greece when my father retired, who was a whole generation older than my friends, fathers. And then we settled in Portland, Oregon. And my first career was architecture. And all I wanted to do was design the beautiful building at first. That's all I wanted to do. And then I discovered Buckminster Fuller. And Buckminster Fuller designed the geodesic dome. And I just couldn't get enough of him. I mean, I read all of his books. I mean, he was not known for his spirituality, but he was absolutely one of the most spiritual people. And his approach was more with less. Okay, so like to cover more territory with less material, more lighter materials. And so I kind of went from designing a beautiful building to solving shelter problems, and that became more important to me. And then my last stint in architecture was designing biotechnology laboratories, which was as far from beauty as you can go. So I transitioned into dress designing, fashion. And I ran an evening gown company, Sophia Demas Couture. That fashion was 10 years. And then there was something about women feeling good because they were wearing a beautiful dress. And I thought, I was looking at my clients and observing, and I had some of these women with perfect bodies, beautiful, filthy rich, and they were miserable, absolutely miserable. And then you had these big, fat women, and they were just confident, just exuded, life. And I'm like, what's wrong with this picture, And what I came to see that it was lack of self-esteem. That was, to me, the key. So I went back to school, and when I was 50, I graduated with my degree in counseling psychology. And I designed
At 50?
I'm sorry?
At 50?
Yes, at 50.
Wow.
So I designed a 12-workshop program called Living a Fearless Life, and to enhance self-esteem in incarcerated women, because then I had a captive audience, So the Philadelphia prison system, the commissioner loved the program, puts me in front of the board, 32 men and 2 women. The 2 women and 2 gay men loved the program. The other ones just rolled their eyes around, So anyway, I didn't get funding, but I did get funding from the Department of Economic Development. So I implemented the program for a number of at-risk women, in recovery, ex-homeless, ex-trafficked women. And so it was like, I was progressively finding my true purpose, which was to really get to the bottom of the problem, and help people that really needed it. So basically, that was it. And you asked about the miracles. Okay, so when I was 19, I was going through two issues that I thought were unsolvable, absolutely unsolvable. And I was just angsting about these two issues. And within 2 months, it was because of a dream I had and a man, that the problems were solved, and I was transformed into I guess a womanhood, adulthood, and that did not go unnoticed with me. I mean, it was really interesting because okay, at the beginning of this dream, the dream is so vivid still in my mind, but at the beginning of the dream, I'm on a stage in an auditorium in a plexiglass booth. I'm wearing a wedding dress, but there's no groom. And it's filled with people. And I'm like, oh, I'm so happy that everybody came, And then at the end of the dream, people are walking past me. And I thought, oh, this is the reception line or something, And I look down and I'm wearing the white wedding dress, but I'm in a coffin. And I woke up. I thought this was portending my imminent death. Okay, that's the first thing that.
And this was at 19.
When I was 19, and I had met this man, and I woke up at 1:30 in the morning, and I walked to his house, and I told him about the dream, and I was 19, he was 27, he was getting his PhD in universal theory or whatever, and he said to me, well, no, this has nothing to do with physical death, because he knew of my issues. He said, this is telling you that what you have hung on to keep believing is not working for you. So these are the things that need to die so that you can make room for what you need. And it transformed me. It really did. So I started paying attention, and more and more things kept happening. And I would tell my friends, and they would go, well, these things only happen to you. I mean, that was wrong, because I'm not special. I'm not a guru. I'm not a saint. And I don't know, 16 years ago, a medium told me I was going to write a book.
Media? What do you mean?
I'm sorry?
What's a media?
Medium.
What do you mean media?
A medium?
A medium, okay.
Who
sees, like a seer.
She will communicate with your departed loved ones. Okay, and I really had no desire, but it was so bizarre. I actually write about this in my book because it was so weird the way I got to her. And so she tells me I'm going to write a book, and I just went, I'm sorry. I said, that's not in the cards. I said, first of all, I have nothing to write about. And two, I said, I'm a people person. There's no way I'm going to sequester myself and write a book. So she just listened. And then she said, word for word, she said, Spirit says when she's ready, there are many spirits here to help her and many hands on earth. And that's how it went down. It was almost like I was forced to write it. And so in 2011, I was reconnecting with a childhood friend, and I told her my latest miracle, and she said, well, these things only happen to you. Well, this time, something clicked. It was like, wait a second. Everybody has a coincidence story, a miracle story, but the number of events are just incredible. So I sat down and I listed all the miracles that I could think of that happened to me. And then what I discovered was preceding each miracle was a coincidence. So there was the coincidence, and then in every case, I acted on the coincidence. I thought of coincidences I have not acted on, and nothing came of it. But each one that I acted on, I got a miracle, which is getting exactly what you need at exactly the right time. So I thought, well,
How do you differentiate coincidences and miracles? Can you throw more light on that?
sure.
Can you share specific examples maybe too?
Yes. Okay. And there's a coincidence and then there's a meaningful coincidence. Okay. So a coincidence like the other day, I was walking down the street. My father I always feel like when I find a nickel, well, actually, no, that's meaningful to me. Okay. Another time I was typing and I believe the word was tribulation. Okay. So it's a word I use, but it's not at the tip of my tongue. Well, exactly the same second that I said tribulation, somebody on the TV said tribulation. Okay, that's a coincidence, but it means nothing. It really means a meaningful coincidence is okay. Before I go into that, I need to give you an overview of my belief system.
Okay, sure.
Okay, all right. So I believe that there's a divine intelligence, God, call it whatever, that wants us to find our true purpose and find happiness. And this entity, better than us, what is the best for us, and communicates with us through dreams, through meeting a stranger that tells you exactly what you needed to hear at that moment, or by placing a coincidence in your path. And then if you take action and act on the coincidence, what happens is you co-create with the miracle. So it's you and the divine co-create. So, okay, so I give these two examples because I mean they're not earth-shattering, but they illustrate, what a meaningful coincidence is. Okay. And both of these things gleaned for me two things that we needed for our wedding. Okay, so my husband Frank. So we decided to get married on the 4th of July, and the date we picked was the 4th of October. So that's 3 months. Okay. So a lot of the venues were taken, photographers, music, all of these things were like. But I didn't care. I didn't care if we used the organist at the church or whatever. So I did get a call from the Mutter Museum. They have a beautiful ballroom that was like, at the time, 1997, it was $4,000, which was quite spendy. And they called to tell me that somebody canceled. They canceled the event and that we could have it. And so I was talking to my friend who's an event planner, and she goes, "Oh, that would be so beautiful. I mean, if you could just." Okay, so just at that time, okay, now just before I sent my check, I call my girlfriend, and a man answers. That's not her husband. And I'm like, I said, "Is Anne there?" And this guy goes, Sophia, is that you? Look, this is Jerry. You called me. Look, I'm sorry. I'm really late for this meeting. I just got out of the shower. Can I call you later? Now I knew that who this was because he has a Greek accent, and I just couldn't believe it. And I said, "Well, wait a second." I said, "What is your telephone number? Because this is a wrong number." And so I was off by one digit. Okay, the last digit. Now, what are the odds that I would call somebody I know and get somebody else I know? Now, I only knew him socially, okay? But still, to get somebody that I knew. And that he would recognize my voice just by saying, is Anne there?
And you didn't have that number saved, like you didn't have his number or anything?
No, never.
Wow.
No. And this was dial. It wasn't like, Anyway, so I said, "Jerry, you promise me you're going to call me back, okay? Promise me." He goes, "I promise." So he calls me back and we chit-chatted, and I told him that I was getting married and about the Mutter Museum, the ballroom at the Mutter Museum. Well, guess what? During that period, Jerry owned the Barclay Hotel in Philadelphia, which is this grand old world hotel. And he says, "Forget it." He goes, "I'll give you the ballroom. I'll give you the ballroom." And then he's kind of also kicked in the presidential suite for 2 nights. But I had to invite him and his girlfriend to the wedding. Fine.
Little sacrifice.
Okay. So that's one. Okay. Now, the other one, And then you can tell me which one you think is stranger, okay? So I get a call. It was a woman who said, I found your driver's license. Okay, I had an Oregon driver's license at the time, and in the park. And I said, oh, because it was snow. Yeah, she found it in the snow. And I said, oh, really? She says, how can I get it back to you? And we determined she only lived 2 blocks away. So I said, just slide it through the slot. Okay, so she had this very nice note about how she and her boyfriend loved to go to Oregon, and there's my driver's license. Okay, well, this is not the end of the story. So just before, about, time before the wedding, I get a call from the same woman. And she says, I think you're going to find this a little strange, but I just found your ATM card.
Wow.
Woman. Okay, so I would go to this one ATM machine that would spit out the card right away. Okay, so I would take the card, and then I would get my money and leave. Well, this one, you put the card in and it keeps the card until the end. And then it says, would you like another transaction? Well, I was used to having the card, so I left. So the next person can wipe out my entire bank account. But it was her. Okay, so she says, do you want me to put it through your mail slot? And I said, no, we have to meet. You have to come to my studio. So she comes to the studio, this lovely young blonde woman, and I had a handmade soap from Oregon to give her to thank her. Turns out she's a concert violinist and offered to play at my wedding, my favorite piece of music, Concierto d'Aranjuez. And she got her friend, a classical guitarist, to play with her. She said, mine is your wedding present, but you can give him some money. So I am walking down the aisle to my favorite piece of music. Okay, so here is the takeaway, okay? The taking action. So when Jerry said, I'll call you later, how easy could it have been for me to go, well, Jerry, no, you don't have to. This is a wrong number. We have nothing to talk about. But it was bigger than me. This was bigger than me. I had to talk to him. I took action. I made him promise. And he called, and I got this absolutely gorgeous venue. Okay, and when this woman, said, can I put it through your mail slot? Yeah, isn't this wild? Yeah, but just go put it in my mail slot. But no, it's bigger than me. And then what I get, so it's a meaningful coincidence. And by taking action on the meaningful coincidence, I got the miracle. I got exactly what I needed at exactly the right time. Does that make sense?
100% makes total sense. Wow.
Now,
First of all, wow. And all of those, it's so amazing. Like those coincidences were just so uncanny and accurate and spot on, just what you needed, for that phase in your life. Wow.
And this kept happening and happening. Now, I don't see one miracle less or bigger than the other, lesser or bigger. But here's another one. So my husband, very soon after we got together, I saw that he had anger issues. And so I would innocently, maybe make a gesture or something. Well, he would take it as I was belittling him. These are all childhood issues. His issues come all from childhood, okay? And then he would go into a rage. And, the 2 times that I was going to leave him, he wanted this relationship so bad, he would do anything. So first time he got a great therapist, but the rages continued. Next time he found a men's group of ragers, and he became the poster boy. But again, and I don't remember what was the last thing, but I said, that's it, I'm out. And I left him, and we would talk about logistics, but something happened where I decided I never wanted to see this guy again, ever. Now, I'm strong-willed. See, I didn't even want to get married, and I did not want children, and the last thing I wanted to do was write a book, okay? So I was successfully single until the age of 45.
45?
45, yes.
Okay, there's hope for me, because I'm still single and searching.
Oh, it's amazing. But you have to ask. You keep asking. So if the universe, if this divine intelligence communicates with us through dreams, strangers, coincidence, we communicate via prayer and gratitude. Okay. And that is how the give and take happens. So I vowed that I would never, ever lay eyes on this guy again. Well, I left. And I was living with my friend, my girlfriend, who was actually going through a divorce. And three amazing, incredible things happened. Okay, the first had to do with A Course in Miracles. Are you familiar with A Course in Miracles? It's a book. It's called A Course in Miracles. Okay. Well, I resisted reading this book. It kept slapping in front of me for 2 years, and I resisted mostly because there's no author. And that was hard for me to digest, that it was channeled, and it was channeled through a woman, and it took her 7 years to write this book, and it's Christ-based. But the interesting thing about the woman is that she was on the faculty in the medical department of Columbia University, which, why would she sort of risk her reputation, and she was Jewish, but she was an atheist. So it was very interesting because this helped her through her transition. And then the other thing, the book pages look too much like the Bible, very thin with numbers. And I'm like, no, this isn't for me. Well, finally I was forced, and it's in the book. I was literally forced to read the book. So I would open it to randomly and get precise advice for whatever the issue was. So I finally had the divorce attorney's card in my hand, and I was like, because anything that I read from this book, even if I didn't like it, the rule was that I had to read it. So I opened the book, and the chapter is the healed relationship. And I'm like, no, I don't want to read this. Well, basically what it said, every time you read the same thing, you can have a different meaning. It said, God is in everyone. And if your brother comes to you with his hand outstretched to connect with you, and you say no, when you say no to your brother, you say no to God. And I'm like, God, okay, fine. Next day he calls me. He wants to get together. Now, I have to say yes.
Yes.
So he comes over, and I was angry. I was really angry. I even had him sit on the other side of the dining room table. And I said, I want you to know that the only reason that you are sitting in front of me is because of a miracle. And he says, well, I have a miracle for you too. This is like all of a sudden he's speaking Chinese. It's not his lingo. I said, okay, you first. So he's describing how on Sunday he was fixing the pump in our fountain in the garden. And there's a basin, and then there's a tall cement column. So the water comes out on top of the column, hugs the column, and goes in the basin. He said, the column slipped and fell on my hand. Okay, this cement heavy column that he needs help to put. And now I quickly look at his hand. He's taking off his wedding band. Okay. And I see, if this was true, his hand should have been hamburger. Okay. But there's just a bruise and a little scratch. And he takes off his wedding ring, and it's squashed. The wedding ring took the weight of the cement. And he said, and I'm not fixing it. Well, I needed something that dramatic to disarm me. I was disarmed. I couldn't believe it. Of all things, his wedding ring.
So that's just so symbolic. So you're like his shield, his protector, something.
Yes. Yes, Suki. Yes. I was so blown away that we started seeing each other. And we started to get back together. And then I was supposed to be the matron of honor at my best friend's wedding for the third time in Maui, Hawaii. So I wanted to have him come with me, but I had trepidation because he had sabotaged all these romantic getaways before. So I finally decided, no, if I'm going to trust. I'm going to have him come. I can always kick him out the door again. So I asked, I invited him to come with me. So we're we're going to the cab comes to take us to the airport. And I thought, oh, I need a reading material because it was like 14 hours from Philadelphia, you know? So I just went up and I had some books that I had started reading but hadn't finished. So I just grabbed one and ran to the cab. And I was so disappointed at the book that I got, because it was called Endless Energy by Dr. Deborah Green. I wanted the novel. Why didn't I get the novel? So I'm on the plane and I'm reading about energy clearings. She's a kinesiologist and she does these energy clearings. And everything she said, I was on board. Just thought, oh God, this sounds so amazing. Like, like I'll have to find somebody that does what she does, And I'm going back and forth on the book because at the back were all the citations, like prayer works, Dr. Larry Dossey says so. So I'm going back and forth and I'm telling Frank about the key highlights. And I go to the back of the book and there's her name, Deborah Green, Maui, Hawaii. She lives not only does she live in Maui, but she lives on Kihei Road, and that's where our condo was that we had rented. So now, what do you do with that? And what do you do with that? I mean, you can say, wow, isn't this a coincidence? Or on the layover, you call her up. And I told her what happened, and she said that I told her our availability, and she said that she would do a reading for both of us. I said, I have to ask Frank. I said, Frank, look, Maui, Kihei Road. He says, well, it's meant to be. So we had our clearings, and that was in 2009. And Frank has not had one anger episode since. I am married to my dream guy.
Oh.
So see what happens? My will. I don't want to get married. Thank God I opened my mind a little bit. Got married. I never want to see him again. Well, the universe forced the issue. And then I don't want a kid. And then in 2011, again, one of my mentors, Father Stephen, who is the closest thing to Jesus, he's not only an Albanian Orthodox priest, but he opened up all the covenant houses, which are youth shelters for youth and for homeless youth. And there was this girl from Turkey at the shelter, and he brought her over. Anyway, long story short, we adopted her.
Oh, nice.
Instantly, Mother's Day is my new favorite holiday. And then I was told I was going to write a book. I argued, and look what happened. I wrote two. So that is, I hope that that's what your audience takes away, is that, unfortunately, God gave us free will. But the universe, God tugs at us. It's like, like the Holy Spirit. You have to ask for you have to invite the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit will let you do your thing, but you have to invite the Holy Spirit in.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, these are, and I noticed that all of these testimonies and coincidences and miracles are centered around your marriage. So definitely you were supposed to get married. You were always supposed to be married and be a mom.
Yeah, and not all of them are, part of my marriage. I also in the book write about obstacles. Okay. And how many times have I said, God, why are you doing this to me? And I can't tell you how many times, either the next day or 2 years down the road, I have thanked God for that obstacle. So at the same time, we are nudged. So the whole thing is to pay attention.
And don't, like, for me particularly, some of the coincidences, I have some coincidences, but I always wave it off like it's just a coincidence. But what I'm learning from your story is pay attention. Is it a meaningful coincidence? And if it is, keep digging. There's something more in there for you. Don't just bypass it.
So what one must sharpen is their intuition. Okay. I mean, my intuition can say, go rob a bank, Well, that's, you can tell, with a little bit of judgment that is really not coming from God.
Yes.
But when you get these things that are like make your jaw drop, and you get a kick in the gut, it's like you do it automatically. It's like you have to do it. You have to take the
Mm.
action. So it's not like, well, should I or shouldn't I, or so the sheer number have been just incredible. In fact, there were so many that I plucked out from the first book all the events that had to do with death, including after-death communication, and that's the second book.
Wow. So let me ask you, I wanted to go back a bit into your childhood. What you said you had that first dream at 19. Prior to that, what was your experience? Did anything happen to you spiritually that triggered all of these supernatural experiences, or was it just at 19
Well,
coming to your own?
funny you should ask. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
because it was another host that asked. Well, what she asked me was, everybody has a story, but why have so many happened to you? And now I can answer this question right away. I give credit to my mother. Okay, so my mother was very religious, but she was one of these people that derived her spirituality from her religion. It wasn't just going to church. It was praying, and she never pushed it on me. But what she would say, so in Greek is my first language. So what she would say is, in Greek, any object can be turned into the diminutive. So you have, like a cup, and then by adding a suffix, it becomes the little cup, and it's cute. That's all. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah.
So what she would say to me, she would say, Sophia, if there's something you would like, just ask little baby Jesus. Little Jesus loves children, and just keep ask for whatever you want. And sometimes if you're scared, like at night, when you get scared, ask the little Virgin Mary to protect you. And so I would. So I guess my answer to your question is, lucky me that from a toddler, communicating with unseen beings was perfectly normal. So I think that has something to do with it.
Oh, I see. So that pretty much opened you up spiritually from that early age.
Yeah,
Wow.
to just keep asking. And I'll tell you
so
something.
interesting.
Divine intelligence truly wants you to find your true purpose and find happiness. I am proof. I feel like I found my true purpose, and I am sublimely happy. Sublimely.
Wow.
And I go all day long and say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. In fact, my first book, because, it's basically a memoir, the miracles are chronological.
Okay.
But there are 2 chapters. One is titled Please, which is prayer, on prayer. And the other one is Thank You, which is on gratitude. And the events in those chapters are more thematic. So honestly, I say thank you all day long, and I ask what I want. And if I don't get it, then it's meant to be. You don't worry about it. You don't worry about anything.
Yeah. So the secret is just gratitude. Just keep saying thank you.
Thank you.
Is
And
that the secret?
keep
Because
asking.
that question, why you? Why do you have all these amazing miracles and coincidences? So is the secret just your gratitude and the condition of your heart?
Because since I was little, I would ask. Ask for these things. And so and I feel that these requests have been acted upon and answered. So and I think that if people really look back and think about, well, how did I meet my husband, or how did I decide on this career? I would say that you might find that there was a coincidence that was acted upon. So people could have experienced these things, but really not have paid attention.
So I'm curious now, how did you meet your husband at 45? When you didn't want to get married, how did it happen? Is this something you want to share?
We met at the gym.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But so I was, because he wouldn't talk to me. Okay, but I would put my coat in this broom closet, and all of a sudden he starts putting his coat next to mine in the broom closet. But for a year, all we said is hello. And I was quite attracted to him. And so then it was, oh yes, I had gotten to know this one guy at the gym. He was an architect, and he had interviewed me for a job. The recession happened, and he kept waiting for another project, and I never got the job. So he was also at our gym. And he brings me over, and he says, we're having our Christmas party. I had gone to their Christmas parties because it was a really big deal, their Christmas parties, and I'd gone with friends. He says, well, our Christmas party tonight, why don't you come? So then I go to the Stairmaster, and Frank comes to the one next to me. And he says, how do you know Don? And I said, well, he interviewed me for a job at his office. How do you know Don? He says, he's my partner. Now, I knew that Don and his wife were the partners, but I didn't know that there was a third partner, which happened to be Frank. So I got to, talk to him at the Christmas party a little bit. And then my friend and I left, and he went back to saying nothing. Anyway, so then he asked me out, and he only talked about himself. And I thought, you know what, this guy's just not into me. So, okay, not every guy has to be into me. He's not into me. So I had invited my friends, a couple, over for dinner, and I had gone to the gym on a Sunday, which I would never go to, and there he is. So on the way home, I thought, you know what, he and George, my friend's husband, know each other. I'll just call and ask him out over for dinner. So anyway, he comes over, and that was that. So it was like I had to let go. Okay, he's not into me. Forget it. And then, so that's
sweet.
But again, if I hadn't called him,
who knows?
So just keep that in the back of your head.
But so you have to be actively participating in it and not just sitting back and waiting for things to happen. You have to make some moves too. Wow, awesome. I wanted to find out about. Thanks so much for sharing a lot of. Man, it's awesome. So I wanted to, if you can share a bit about your second book, the what's it called? The Consciousness Beyond Death. Is there anything you can quickly share about that? And then I also wanted to learn about the work you're doing with the medical and the scientific network.
Yes. Okay. So there's 10 chapters. 7 out of the 10 are my personal experiences. And, I just recently published the audiobook for that one because it's much shorter than the first one. And honestly, I can't believe these things happened to me. And then, so 7 out of the 10 chapters are my experiences, and 3 are of 3 close friends' experiences. And they're unbelievable. Wow. And so I guess we don't have that much time, but it's okay. So what I have learned through these experiences, that without any doubt, there is no doubt that when we die, we simply shed our bodies, and we are as present as we are now. You know what? I'll give you 2 examples that are not in the book that happened since the book was published. Okay. One, I went to the ophthalmologist and I told her about my book, and she says, well, I have a story for you. And I said, okay. She said, well, I had to go to this gala with my husband, but it was after a day of many surgeries, and I was dead tired, and I just didn't want to go. But we had to go. And then I had to take the babysitter home because it's my husband's rule never to be alone with a female babysitter. So she said, I was driving back home, and I heard my grandmother scream, wake up! And she goes, I came to, and I was heading into a brick wall. Okay. She was unconscious. She had fallen asleep at the wheel, and her grandmother alerted her to wake up. Okay. So that's an unsolicited communication that has saved somebody. Okay. The other one, about 6 months ago, I lost one of my oldest, dearest friends, a world citizen, magnificent person. She was of Indian descent, born in South Africa. Her brothers were in Australia, so she would go to Australia. Her undergraduate degree from University of Edinburgh in Scotland, PhD from University of Pennsylvania, and she died suddenly. I had the good fortune to have a FaceTime visit with her 2 days before her heart attack, when she told me she loved me and I was her sister. And that will be with me forever, So I'm walking down the street thinking, oh God, God, I'm not going to ever hear your laugh again. I'm never going to eat that delicious Indian food again, And then I said directly to her, I said, Pushpa, I said, this may be too soon for you, but whenever you're ready, I want a sign. I swear to you. The very next morning, I got a Facebook friend request.
Really?
Yes. Now, I have received Facebook friend requests from people who are already my friend, but there's no photograph of them. Like somebody's trying to hack my thing. But
Yeah.
there was a photograph of her. I mean, of course, she was one of my friends anyway. But there she was in a photograph of her. But the timing, the very next morning, I get a friend request from Pushpa. I have like 600 some friends.
Right. Wow.
So what I'm saying, and people have said, well, I've asked, well, keep asking. They have to be ready. Just because you ask doesn't mean, that you're going to get what you want.
Wow. But as Christians, do you believe, because I know the Bible says it's appointed for man to die and after death comes judgment. So do you think the spirits, like, I don't even know how to frame this question now, because sometimes demons can also take opportunity, right, to
Okay.
do these.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that. Well, first of all, I may be heretic to some people, but I don't believe that you're judged when you die.
Okay.
I think you make your hell or heaven on earth, and we all go to the same place, but we all have different experiences. And what's really wonderful through these experiences that I've had, that I know now that when I die, I can communicate with the people I left behind in very, very clever ways. But yes, there could be evil spirits, but I feel protected.
Okay.
And
Right.
we don't have time, but I did have an experience once where I feel like I was tested. And I, from that experience, I know that I will forever be protected.
That is such a good and encouraging thing to know, right? To know that you're covered, like you're protected. There's something higher,
Yes.
guiding and protecting you.
Yes.
That's awesome. Thanks for
And
sharing that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and people ask me a lot, like, well, why is there a God, or why do if like there's earthquakes and avalanches and these natural disasters, Well, guess what? We're here on Earth. We're not in paradise. That's part of the deal of being on Earth. So,
Exactly.
okay, so you die in an avalanche, I mean, okay, So I believe that I also, as part of my prayer, ask for God to hear my mother's and father's sort of entreaties, like for their intercessions. And I know,
Yeah.
I know that they are looking after me, and I know that Jesus pays attention to them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Sure. That's so true. Now I'm really intrigued. I think I might want to read that second book because those, yeah, a lot of people have those type of experiences, and it always intrigues me because I totally don't understand it. I cannot tell you I do not understand it. So it'll be nice to read that one. So can you share a little quickly about the work you're doing with the medical?
Yeah. So I don't know how I got this email, but I got this email from the Scientific and Medical Network. And I looked into it. I mean, they were offering these really interesting programs, like webinars, about the subconscious. And so I contacted them. And because of this contact, the executive director, like he became very interested in my books. And so at the time when I made the contact, the trend is through the scientific community now is coincidence. There's a lot of scientists that are studying coincidence.
Coincidences.
And yes, and this group is a group of esteemed scientists that study the paranormal. So they invited me to join their group, and as the only non-academic, non-scientist, and then to help plan and participate in the Synchronicity Summit, which is all about coincidence. And then I was so well received that they compiled essays from the scientists and published a book, The Playful Universe. And my essay is chapter 17.
Oh,
But
nice.
here's the really interesting part, okay? So there was no real interest in the second book. Are you familiar with this scientist? His name is Dr. Eben Alexander, who wrote Proof of Heaven.
No, I need to be writing these things down.
So I had read this book. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Proof of Heaven. And he had a near-death experience. So he wrote about the book. So I contacted him and he wanted to read the first book. He loved it. And when he found out that I had written the second book, he asked if I would send him my manuscript so that he can endorse the book. I said, sure. So he writes back and he says, I'm sorry, I cannot endorse your book because there's not sufficient discussion on consciousness. That was BS because the whole foreword was written by Dr. Deborah Green, who did the energy clearings. It's all about consciousness. What his email was a code for, I'm a neurosurgeon, I can almost die, go to heaven, come back and write about it. Because it's an NDE, near-death experience. And NDEs have been studied for decades. But I can't touch your topic with a 10-foot pole. So guess what? Just before publication, a new field of study crops up, scientific study, ADC, after-death communication. So now they're all interested in my book.
Oh, look at that.
It's very nascent. So, but when they get up there, I'll be right there. I've already written the book.
That's true. And your book will be a reference for so many others that will come,
Yes. And I can't tell you how many people have found comfort in their grief after losing somebody. And it's like the scientists are catching up to the spiritualists.
Spiritual, yeah. This world is deep. It's beyond physical. I feel like there's so much more happening in the spiritual than in the physical.
Yes. Well, when I started writing the first book, I had this urge to study quantum mechanics. My faith is unshakable, but I wanted some kind of explanation as how can these events happen here in our physical world? And it helped me. It really helped me. So I
Awesome. Congrats on that. I mean, being ahead of the game, a forerunner in that area. I love that. Okay. So can you tell our audience where they can get your books and how they can engage you, your social media, website, everything?
Okay, well, everything's on my website, and that's just my name, sophiademas.com. And you can actually get my book through there. It's on Amazon. You can order it through Barnes & Noble. And and here's an interesting, for people who are interested in the mystical. So I have this one page. It's my influencers. So it's 8 individuals that I have had personal contact with that I consider to be mentors. So one of them, if you read just one blurb, it's Abbess Emiliani. She's a nun, you can't miss her, but she's an extraordinary human being. But it's a first-hand account of bilocation, which pretty much means being at 2 places at once. It's just fascinating.
Wow. Amazing. Mind blown.
So that's it. It's like, basically, if these things can happen to me, that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to convert anybody. It's just that this is what works for me.
Your experience, yeah.
This is what works for me. And if it can happen to me, it can happen to you.
I'm sure people will relate to this. People probably have this type of experiences again. And, imagine if you overlook like the book, like reading the book and it taking you to that chapter of healing relationships, right? And then your husband calls it you obeyed, you tuned into that coincidence, right? So I think it's a lesson for us all. Like when God could actually be trying to reorder your steps to where he needs you to be, but you need to listen and obey and get into it.
Yes, so I did not want to read that chapter. I did not want to read that chapter, but it was my rule. I had to read the chapter. And it changed the mind. And the definition of a miracle in the A Course in Miracles is a change of perception for the better. So my will was, I don't want to read this book. I had to, and I allowed the book to change my perception.
Wow. Interesting. Thank you so much for your rich wisdom and nuggets. So, do you have any last words for our listeners? And I'm going to put all your information in the show notes of the podcast and the YouTube video description so that people can reach out to you, go to your website, buy the book. But do you have any last word for our audience? Anything else you want us to know?
No, I think I've said everything I needed to say, but I also wanted to thank you for your platform. This is a great platform to have people tell their stories, their unique stories.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Thanks for honoring me with your presence. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, viewers, for watching. Really appreciate you. Please check the description, go to the show notes, get more information about Sophia's work, buy the book, listen, pay attention to those coincidences, those miracles. God could be trying to lead you somewhere. But thank you so much. Please like, comment, subscribe, share. Please keep coming back for more content. Give us a review wherever you're listening from, and really appreciate your support. Thank you so much. See you next time. Bye. Okay, let me stop the recording, and I wanted to.